What's up, gamers? This is Screen Smash, CouchSoup's video game podcast where we talk about all things in and around the world of video games. I am your host, Dan Morris. Smashing your screen this week, we have Nick Mckay.
Hello.
Louis Reza.
Hail to the king, baby.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Louis. And joining us this week, special guest, we have Editor-in-Chief for Debug Magazine, Andrew Dickinson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. Good to be here. Nice to see you all.
Thank you for joining us so much this week, Andrew. We got a lot to get into tonight with you and why you're going to be here telling us all about Debug Magazine as well as the Indie Game Awards that you guys are hosting this week. Just before we do that, I want to just shout out to all of our viewers, listeners, everyone out there. If you like playing video games, be sure to press that button on your screen, because it's pressing buttons. That's what you do when you play video games. Let us know what you think. Give us a like, leave a comment, or leave us some emojis that make shiny sounds or Pokemon sounds, because engagement. We want to know what you guys are liking and tell us more. Everything, all of it. Okay. With that out of the way, let's move on to Andrew. Sir, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about Debug Magazine, which is a indie game focused magazine that champions independently developed games and developers.
That is correct. Yeah. So I started with the team kind of end of last year. I took over from their previous editor, who is Dean Mortlock, who is quite people in the UK would know him. He used to edit and write for magazines back in the 90s. And he helped set up Debug originally with Daniel from a company called Wave Game Studios, who currently publish Dreamcast games for the actual Dreamcast that has been dead, quote unquote, for the last 20 odd years. But they publish modern games for the Dreamcast. And Daniel decided he wanted to set up a new magazine that kind of championed indie games, because that's kind of the area that he is in, and kind of Debug was born out of that. And I took over from that. I've come from a background of I was the editor-in-chief of Lock On gaming journal for 5 issues, and I've worked on a bunch of things, like a book called Handheld History. I've written a couple of books myself about the Dreamcast. So yeah, I've come from a background of doing a lot of kind of magazine and book work all around video games over the past 5 or 6 years. And Debug's kind of the natural evolution, getting into kind of talking about indie games and doing a proper magazine, which is a rarity these days. Physical magazines are kind of dying out, but the indie magazines are kind of coming back with a vengeance. So
yeah, I can definitely shout out that as well, because I myself am also working with a couple of indie magazines too, and writing for pieces like that with Reload and the upcoming now Fearzine, both independent magazines as well as focus on indie games as well. What's the best way for people to get Debug if they wanted to support Debug?
Sure. The best way would be to go to our website, which is teamdebug.com, and you can buy it digitally there if you'd like to. And we're physical too, so you can buy physical copies, and we ship all over the world. So wherever you are, you can buy a physical copy and get it delivered to you. But if you prefer digital, if you're not a physical kind of person, then you can read it digitally too. So yeah.
Very cool. I know for me, I like the old school retro feel of a physical magazine. Like, it brings me back to when I was a kid, grabbing up every magazine I could get off the counter and read about games, especially when the internet wasn't as big of a deal. Old people problems, I guess.
Yeah, I actually really do miss that as well. I've always had a good time. I know it's a nerd in me, but it's kind of like, dude, check this out, bro. Like bring it to work or whatever. Well, not work, before it was high school. But I miss it. I miss that physical edge of being able to like take out a poster and then put it up on your wall, and it's like, look how many magazines I get. I don't know. I think it's cool. So when I hear it, there's that absolutely a form of nostalgia, but it's also kind of like an exciting, what are you bringing to the table? What is it that I can go and show my friends about? So I don't know. It's kind of like a record collection rather than a CD collection. It's just like, it just feels vintage. I love it.
There's actually a thing too now of collecting like old magazines. And like, I used to have a massive collection of old magazines, and I'm like salty that I don't still have a lot of them for one reason or another over the years.
I still have my Game Informer, which announced Legend of Zelda Ocarina. I still have that. I don't know where it is,
It's
I don't know whether
somewhere.
it's at my house or if it's at my parents' house, but I got that bitch somewhere. So I'll look for that, and next time I'll come up and be like, oh.
Yeah. There's also like the old school magazines used to come with like demo discs too. So like that was the other big thing to get all the demo discs.
Yeah, was that there was all kinds of posters inside as well. I used to love getting magazines for the posters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've seen some people do some really cool stuff where they'll build like shelf units out of the magazines, and I wanted to do that for a while. Like you can get them hardened so that like you can actually just pick it up and move it somewhere, and that way it's like a stackable little table that you can put like your screen on top of or something like that. I just think it'd be cool to have 50 Game Informers like classics that you can I don't know. There's cool ideas. Go on Etsy or whatever it's called.
I wouldn't want to not be able to read them though, right? Like if you kind of stack them up, you wouldn't be able to open them anymore. Like I have like
at your own risk.
I've got a bunch of old magazines. Like I collect a whole bunch. Like in the UK, the big one is Edge magazine, which I don't know if you've heard of, but that's like the big gaming magazine over here. And I've got like a bunch of old copies of that and the official Dreamcast magazine as well. But yeah,
I think it's actually pretty interesting too, the Dreamcast aspect, that there's this resurgence of Dreamcast, and like there's someone else I've met through Reload who's a big Dreamcast person, and even my local game shop sells the new Dreamcast games that are playable on a Dreamcast. I'm just like, that's just weird but awesome at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, so moving us along, we'll get into actually give us a little bit more deep dive into what's the event that's coming up that includes Debug U as well as the Indie Game Awards. But we'll get to the Indie Game Awards. So let's tell us a little bit more about the magazine as well as Debug U and how they tie together.
So I guess the whole point of the magazine really is to it's at the moment the press, gaming press, be that physical magazines or online, whatever, they don't have as much time for indie games as they do for AAA. They'll cover them and stuff, but they never get as much love as kind of the AAA stuff gets. You'll see tons of stuff about Elden Ring and Death Stranding, but you'll see very little about some of the smaller indie games that kind of deserve to have more said about them. So the magazine is first and foremost all about those games, and we cover things from student games and solo devs all the way up to the bigger developers that are kind of working with people like Annapurna and stuff like that. And each issue we cover like probably well over 100 different indie titles from different people. So we want to cover that, and we want to also talk to the developers and find out kind of their process, what they're doing, any kind of tips and tricks they have for other fellow developers, because we have a lot of developers who read the magazine too, and people who are wanting to get into the development industry, into kind of game development. So the whole thing really is about indie games, the people who make them and the people who love them, I suppose. And so the reason that we then decided to do this event, which is Debug U, which is on February the 2nd, it's this education focused event. So Debug U, like university, like the iTunes U that they used to have, that I don't think they got rid of that a few years ago. But it's a place, it's at a university in the UK, Nottingham Trent University, one of their awesome kind of venues that they have. And the whole point is it's like a place that you can go and experience indie games from a variety of people, again, from students all the way up to bigger people. So we've got like student games there. We have C Smash VRS, which is kind of an indie game, but it's kind of on the PSVR 2. And we have everything in between that. So all sorts of games that you can play. And we also have talks from kind of veterans from the industry. We have somebody from Bullfrog, the people who made Theme Hospital and things like that, who's going to be there talking about his time in the industry. We have, I can't remember his name, but we have somebody who worked with EA and made a bunch of games with EA and a bunch of other developers as well. So it's kind of like, it's education focused. It's a place for these devs to come and get feedback for the games they've made. It's a place to kind of network with different people and just to kind of hang out and kind of take in a lot of indie gaming goodness, I guess. So yeah.
So it's an actual like physical event, right? Like people are physically going to be here at this location and being amongst themselves, kind of like a little bit of like a old school like indie game developer, but conference, like a little baby E3 kind of thing.
Yeah,
What E3
like
used to be way back in the day.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, and it's just nice to have that, I think, because so often these developers work, especially after the pandemic, so they just work on their own and they don't see anybody and they're not getting feedback, or if they are, it's from a specific group of people, and this kind of brings a lot more people. We've got people from like the publishing arm of the games industry, from PR, from other fellow devs, journalists. So they're getting all these people coming in and kind of seeing their work, which is great for them. And I think the other way around as well, it's great for the people coming because they get to see a bunch of new games that they've never seen before, stuff that maybe they wouldn't have even thought to look at. We've got a great game called Phoenix Springs, which looks fantastic. Just a whole range of different stuff. And the fact that there are talks and Q&As and stuff like that kind of gives it, there's just lots to do basically over the course of the day. There'll be a lot to do, a lot of people to speak to, and there's a bar, which is all you can kind of ask for that kind of event. And we are recording all of the talks and the Q&As as well, so they'll be available on the Debug U website at a later date. So even if you physically couldn't come because you're not in the UK, then you'll be able to see those talks and Q&As later, even though you couldn't come.
You had me at bar.
Most people say that, yeah. I think that's where I'll be hanging out most of the time, to be perfectly honest.
This is tea. That sounds awesome.
This is the first time you're doing it, right?
Yes, it is the first time. They were already planning it before I started. So it's Daniel, who's kind of the founder of Debug, and then Alex Hunt, who's also known as the Sega Guru on YouTube. They started this off together, so they kind of, it's their thing more than mine. My thing is the other thing we're going to be talking about, which is the Game Awards. But this was their idea, and I'm like fully on board with it because I believe that we should be having a lot more of these kind of events, and we do want to do more of them going forward. So different universities across the country, and maybe even in different countries if we can do that. I was in Bilbao in Spain at the end of last year for a conference there, and it would be great to have spread something like Debug U around to different places, just to give indie developers a place to get that feedback, to be able to talk to other people, for students to gather and all that kind of stuff, as well as for gamers to come and just discover amazing cool new indie games. So
how long has it taken to put the whole event together from the beginning of planning it?
I think it's been they were doing it before I started, so I think they were doing it for a good 5 to 6 months before I started. So at this point, it's been roughly 9 to 10 months. So they've been going at it for quite a while, getting the venue sorted, and getting developers involved and all that kind of thing. From conception of the idea all the way up to where we are now, which is literally days away from it at this point while we're recording. It's taken probably around 9 months, I'd say.
Jeez.
Yeah.
As someone who's really close to the indie game side of things, and it's something I'm personally fascinated by game development in general, even though I know very little about it myself. I've done a little bit of game dev in college before. It's something I've been looking at again myself, but I would be so interested in actually attending something like this if given the opportunity, if it starts to spread and you can start doing global events in different parts of the world. And I can only imagine how useful of a resource this would be for the actual developers, being able to, like you said, the feedback. I understand how important feedback is. Something here that even just doing podcasting and doing shows, producing content, it's something that's invaluable just to get proper feedback on stuff, and constantly asking for feedback all the time. Yeah, I mean, that's very cool. I think that's a very much needed thing, especially like you said, in the market now, in the industry. We need to help the smaller indie devs as much as possible, not to go too hard on it, but especially with how volatile the AAA space is. I don't want to go too down that rabbit hole, but it's not something too happy to discuss.
No, it's not great right now. It's it's been, I mean, we thought last year was terrible, and then the last couple of weeks have been even worse in terms of kind of job losses and stuff. So it's obviously it's great. We need to support those people too. But it's in terms of indie devs as well. I mean, indie devs have always had a tough time because just they don't get the same kind of, I mean, even if you go to say something like Steam, and Steam doesn't often give indie devs the same kind of reach as a AAA would get. So it's a lot harder for an indie game to get a following, to get people to know they even exist. And then we look at all these games that we're covering, and you go to Steam and you can very easily check Steam sales and how much they've made, how many people have bought it. And sometimes they're in the hundreds, which is not very many for some of these games, which are incredible and have had so much time and effort put into them. And only hundreds of people have bought and seen these games. And yet the full power of Steam goes towards these AAAs who already have huge marketing budgets and can get, they could get the kind of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to buy their game without Steam. So it's, this is why we do what we do, because we want to give people that platform that maybe other places just don't give indie devs.
Yeah, discoverability is just the ultimate hardship for any smaller studio or solo devs or anyone in that field.
Like there's always a pretty good they try, I guess you could say, when they have the indie big thing where they start putting them all at the front, but at the same time they kind of just go, here you go. We did it. Yeah. It's very it feels very Band-Aid to me. And so I prefer how what you're exactly what you're doing, what we are trying to do as well, where we try to give it a little more oomph, just a little insider, because man, it's so interesting to see these games that are on par with AAAs that are developed by 12 people when when you see the credits of a AAA, you can sit there for 20 minutes. And I'm like, dude, how are you not all entertained? How is not everybody, even if the game sucks sometimes, it's kind of you know what? There was 4 guys made this, and not one of them was from the same country, so none of them speak the same language, and somehow they pulled this off. How are you not at least just look at it, man? And then I think that a lot of the time also is that people don't really get that part, that it's just they see the game, is it something I want, is it not, whatever, as opposed to giving a little extra try this if you like this. But instead we're always getting try this if you like this, because this is also a AAA. I want to see more of these games get attached to those things. I want to see more of those people start to get a lot of those credits, because that's where they come from. And if the developers, these big AAA places, we're not talking about it, but if they do want to get the best of the best, look at the people who are putting together stuff with nothing. Tony Stark did this in a cave. You can find them. There are 20 other guys in caves that have no idea what they're doing, and they made this beautiful stuff. Listen to them. Go, man. We promise you they're there. We promise you they're there. So I don't know. That's my spiel.
The whole thing about if you like this, then you should go play this. That's something that we do in the magazine as well. It's we do reviews on games, and we're if you like this game, then maybe you enjoy this. So we're kind of pointing people in the direction of other indie games that they might like to, okay, here's a game about, with solid characters and stuff like this. And if you like character-driven narratives, then maybe try Firewatch or stuff like that. So we're always pointing people in the direction of other things that maybe they already know of, or maybe they don't, or things that have passed them by. It's we also, while we try and do things that are coming out now and coming out in the future, we do also like to point backwards to things too. We have these in case you missed it pages where we'll just kind of highlight a particular game. This time we did something Season A Letter to the Future, which came out at the beginning of 2023 and very quickly just went off people's radars. And that's an example of a big indie, because Sony promoted that and it was a big PlayStation game, but it was an indie game. It was created by an indie studio. They just happened to have some of Sony's money behind them, which is great. But it just didn't get the love that it deserves. So it's we want to try and get people to go back to these older indie games too, not just the new ones, but the older ones that maybe didn't get quite as much love as they deserved. And we even have a category in the awards for that too. So yeah.
I mean, do you think in terms of discoverability for indie games, do you think it's kind of useful to put them on the subscription services like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus? Because I know I've played quite a few more indie games recently since getting my PS5 and getting the game catalog through PS Plus, because there's a lot of cool indie games you can pick out. But I mean, I feel like they're not as marketed, as they could be. It's always the big AAA games that are coming out. So do you think that should be a push for these subscription services to say, here's some indie titles and just put some love into that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, interestingly, like Xbox and PlayStation both have like indie wings, as it were. Like you've got Shu from PlayStation, who's like all about indie, and he's always pushing indie forward. And there are a bunch of those games, like you say, on PlayStation Plus. And then Xbox has Idea Xbox, so they're kind of trying there, and at least a lot more than other people are. But yeah, those services are great for that because this is a way for people to get to play games. They don't have to spend a bunch of money to play a game that maybe they don't gel with, they don't get on with, and they get to try it and go, okay, this is great. And I think it has to be coupled with something like, okay, well, if you like this game, then here, buy the full version, or here's a place where you can buy a physical collector's edition. Because the one thing about that is, while it's great for discoverability because it gets people to play the games that they wouldn't have even not even thought to play before because it's free and it's part of their subscription. The developers don't get that much from it. It's like the Spotify model, right? Where they get like a certain percentage. It's like clicks essentially. That however much their game gets played, they get paid, and they can't live off that realistically. Like that's not going to pay the bills. So there needs to be other ways as well. So once people have discovered them, then it's like, well, okay, then there needs to be like ways for people to buy that. Either digitally or physically, and support that game beyond just the subscription model. So there needs to be ways to look at that and see how can you push people towards supporting these developers more and what that looks like, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely a caveat there where, people are like, oh yeah, I've played it, I'm good. But yeah, I've had that before where I play a game. I'm like, man, this is just so good. I want to support this development team, and I'll still buy the game, even if I was able to play it with like Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation's Premium Plus services that they offer now. And all I could keep thinking about now is how I miss the old days in the original like Xbox 360 Summer of Arcades. Love the Summer of Arcade. And it did so many great things to highlight these games. Like it was... I'm trying to remember exactly how it broke down, but each summer they would do, I think it was 4 to 5 weeks of games. Each week they would highlight a new game, and it was like, here's the spotlight of this game for this week. And they would do a deal kind of thing where it's like, if you buy 3, you save $5. If you buy 4, you save $7. If you buy all 5 games, you save $10 or something. So you could do a package deal. And a lot of times I would buy the whole bundle and save that extra $10 and then play these games. We're talking about games now who have massive recognition, like Limbo. Everybody knows Limbo. Limbo wasn't a thing once upon a time. It was a Summer of Arcade game that I played because it was part of the Summer of Arcade bundle. And I was like, oh my God, I love this game. And like, I'm always looking forward to the next game from that studio or that creator who then went on to do Inside and now Cocoon. And Cocoon's one of the most highly praised games in that space. Like, there's always a starting point to try to really do that.
Yeah, and I was actually gonna talk about that too. That like like we're talking about, if you like, then you'll like, and then there's some games that are like, there's nothing like it, like But I think that those are so good. They stand alone. They stand alone so strongly that there's no other thing that you can do other than take notice. I'm talking about games like Humanity, Thomas Was Alone, what's the one with the oh my God, I'm forgetting the girl that it's really hard, Celeste. Like there's these games that they are their own thing. Yeah, there've been elements from other games. It's a puzzle game, it's a this game, it's a that game, but man, like there's so much art to this. There's so much that could be done. There's so much that could be pulled apart, and it gets annoying and it gets really frustrating when it's kind of like how people talk about there's no such thing as good music anymore. Like, just look for it, go out, look for it. It's still there, but you have to look for it. And the frustrating part is that that's not what the zeitgeist is. That's not what they want to, put at the forefront, because that's not what makes the money. It may get attention, but it's not what's making the money. And I'm just kind of like, who cares about the money? If you are getting the attention, the money's going to come. And so, like we had people here on this show telling us that if you're getting into Game Pass, it actually helps out. because even though they're not buying the game, you're getting paid for having it on the Game Pass. So that would help a lot of the indie developers out there. It would not hurt it. And those kinds of things, I think, are like, these giant companies, they can do those things. Why they do, why they don't, left to be determined, I guess. But these are the voices of the people that are being loud, and we want you to bring these people to the forefront. There's a reason for it. So everybody pick up your pickaxes and let's go storm the castle. Come on, let's go.
It's exactly like music wise, like thinking of music, like indie games are exactly like that. I like that because if you find an artist that you really love, you're like, oh, I've discovered this artist, and you'll listen to them on streaming services because that's just what we do now. Apple Music, Spotify, whatever. You'll listen to them on that. But if you really love them, you'll go buy the vinyl. You'll go watch them in concert. You'll buy a T-shirt, that kind of stuff. If you really love them, and that's almost what we need to do with indies. Like, use streaming services, use gaming platforms like Xbox Live and stuff. But if you really love them, go and support them some of the way, just like you would a musician. And that's exactly what we need to be like telling people to do at this point, to support the indie games and the indie studios that they really love. To be honest, a lot of people do that. Like there is Rain World as an example. People love that game. It's got a huge fan base, and they do plushes and like all sorts of merch. Pizza Tower is the same. Like before that game even came out, there was merch for that game, and people ate it up. And that guy made so much money off just merch for a game that hadn't even released yet, which is great for him. But it doesn't happen for every dev. So I guess it's just, if you love a game, do what you do for a musician, go and support them like you would a band, basically. So
I recently just, we were making fun of me about this last week. I just rebought Hi-Fi Rush and Guardians of the Galaxy because god damn, those are so good. And I they're still there free on Game Pass, but I'm like, you know what? I need to support these people. I have to. And so I've just out of pure I guess my own weird sense of justice. I am Batman. I'm going to go out and I will buy these games from you because, oh man, you deserve all the praise. You deserve all of the credit. They are so good, so beautiful. The same thing with Fury. I bought it 3 times because I'm an idiot, but and I still haven't beat the damn game. I'm still stuck on the same freaking guy. But anyway, yeah, you're right. I
have a tendency to double dip on games between physical and digital too, where I will buy the game both physical and digital because I like having the physical game, but I also like the convenience of digital, but I'm never happy with one over the other. Yeah. So if I have the option, especially with limited run games, I'm like, I was just reading about how like Xbox is one of the least used platforms for limited run because they say that they don't make enough money because they don't sell enough copies. And that makes me kind of sad because Xbox is my preferred platform. And I constantly see games on limited run that I'm like, I want this, but I'd rather have it for Xbox. I still end up buying it either for Switch or PlayStation sometimes. But it's like, man, if only it was on Xbox, because like I'd be happy to have that physical version, especially if I already own it digitally. I like having that physical copy on the shelf to look at and hold.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like I've completely changed over to like digital purchases. Finally having like internet that sometimes works. But I actually got God of War. I think I was telling Dan last week I got God of War Ragnarok as a physical copy. It was the first physical copy PlayStation 5 game that I've ever got. It's the only one I have. And it's kind of crazy to think I've been playing so many games through like, the game catalog and buying games online. Like that was literally the first physical case that I got. It's quite nuts.
Next thing we got to get into is the Game Awards. The Indie Game Awards that Debug is running, which that was the first thing that jumped out to me, especially after, we're after award seasons, the Game Awards is over, but the Game Awards, that's a whole thing. We did a whole discussion on that before. We did our own Game Awards. We did the Smashies. We had fun with that. And even still, it was like, internally, we had a lot of back and forth on indie games and what indie games to talk about. Do we have an indie game category? And then like what qualifies, what should be, what shouldn't be. So the fact that there is a standalone Indie Game Awards spoke out to me, and I'm really glad that we were able to arrange this with you, Andrew, to get you on and help support that and promote that for you guys. So that is the Indie Game Awards, which will be on February 2nd, or today, if you're watching this episode of the Screen Smash podcast on YouTube. So you can basically go and watch this event later today, I believe around the same time, but it is set for 9 p.m. GMT. Correct, Andrew?
That's correct, yeah.
Yep. And that's going to be hosted by presenter and personality Trista Bytes.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Who's awesome. She's a streamer. She does a lot of work. She does a lot of retro stuff, but she's also really into indie games quite heavily. She's done a lot of interviews with different kind of indie developers on YouTube. If you follow her on YouTube, you'll see some of those. But yeah, she's great. She does a lot of kind of presenting work here in the UK for different events and things. And yeah, we thought if I've known her for a few years, seen her around at events and stuff, and she's just fantastic. She's also writing a column for the magazine now, nice. So it just made sense to have her come in and host for us. Yeah,
very cool. So what can we expect from the Indie Game Awards themselves?
So yeah, it's obviously our first one. So we're still like, I mean, it was a weird one. So we're already doing Debug U, and I came in like a few months ago, and I said to Daniel, "Wouldn't it be great if we did like an Indie Game Awards?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, that would be great one day." And I was like, "Well, maybe we should do it like sooner than one day, where you could do it now." And we essentially decided we're doing this event in February. It kind of makes sense to maybe have it at the same time, do that. And we were actually deciding this before any of the other events, like the Game Awards and the Golden Joysticks had come on. We were kind of deciding to do it. And then when the Golden Joysticks and the Game Awards came on, and there was all the controversy with like not that much indie representation, not letting people speak, all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden people kind of noticing us, because we were like, oh, we're going to let people speak. Like, this is the whole point of us doing this, is that we want indie devs to have a voice, and we want to celebrate indie games. So that was great. But because it's our first one, it's going to be awesome, but it will be it'll be essentially us doing going through 18 awards. We're not going to have anything. So we're not going to have any advertisements. So there'll be no like massive advertisements like the Game Awards.
Fortnite.
We are sponsored by Press Engine, who are awesome, but they're not going to be like running 10-minute adverts in the middle of the awards, so don't worry. Then we're also not we're doing all the things that other people don't do. So the whole point of it is just to celebrate indie. So we're just going to run through all of them. We've got 18 categories, but we're going to run through them and give people ample time to talk about their games and stuff like that. So it'll just be a regular award ceremony, I guess. No bands playing and nothing like that. Nothing to distract from the awards themselves. It is all about celebrating those indies. And the 18 different categories. I don't know why we did 18 categories now. It's a lot of categories. Maybe too many, but they all do different things.
Well, you got to have a minimum 4-hour award ceremony, clearly.
It's going to go for like 2 hours, I think. 4 hours for 18 would be possible. Well, we may need wrap it up signs then, I guess, if we want to keep it under 4 hours, but we're not doing that. So
no, is this going to be a live streamed event?
It is live streamed, yes. Obviously, it's live at the venue that we're holding Debug U, but it'll be live streamed as well to YouTube and to Twitch, so people can watch along, comment along, stuff like that. Yeah.
What are the types of categories that you guys have for the awards?
So there's like the ones you'd expect. So stuff like best gameplay, best art direction, best sound design, best soundtrack, stuff like that. So the kind of standard stuff. We've got Game of the Year. We've got a subscriber's choice for people who subscribe to the magazine. But then we also have stuff like the Safe in Our World Award for Mental Health. So we kind of partnered with the charity Safe in Our World, who help gamers, but also game developers kind of with mental health related issues. So, helping devs with like burnout and anxiety and depression, and also kind of advising about, gamers with the same. And they kind of always pick like amazing games for people to play who are going through stuff like depression or anxiety to kind of help them with that. So you'll see on their website and on their socials quite often they will kind of highlight different games. that they think are great for that kind of thing. So we wanted to have a category that kind of highlighted amazing games that came out in the last year that, either are great for helping people with different kind of mental issues, or highlight mental issues in their storytelling in a way that's really positive and engaging and helpful.
It's very cool.
And then we also there's a charity in the UK in Manchester called Everyone Can, who are an accessibility charity, making sure basically everyone can play games in various ways. So we've got the Everyone Can Award for accessibility, so games that like really strive to be accessible to as many people as possible. And both of those charities have chosen the winners for those categories too. So we've kind of, which is great. We have like best VR, we have best new studio. We've got so many different categories, but they all kind of speak to different parts of the industry and kind of really hone in on really like important issues like accessibility and such.
I was so interested in asking about that, and you covered everything. So whatever, I don't need to ask anything. But like, man, when I saw that, Safe in Our World, and I'm just kind of like, okay, what is that? Because I work with mental health, and it's so difficult, especially right now. Things got kind of crazy the past couple of years, no reason why. And so like when I see things like that, it warms my heart to a degree that is almost burning, and I get teary-eyed whenever I see that kind of stuff, because it's just like I know what the struggles could be. And as important as it is to also bring indie developers to the forefront, I think that we also tend to forget about people just in general, and we tend to forget about what people are going through, and that I keep referring to video games as art form because they are art form, and I think that it's important to remember that we can use art to heal. And so there are, games aren't just violence and Call of Duty. They are also a means of looking through another kind of looking glass of a way of getting into a world that you haven't seen before, or one that you don't remember well. Just going on in my VR, the first time when I got it, I went to San Francisco, which this was during the pandemic, so I could not actually go. And I was going to all the streets that I hadn't been to, because my sister used to live there, that I hadn't been to in over a decade. And I was kind of moved by just those little things. And, you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are just caught in the moment, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it felt like I was there. It felt like something that I could do. It got me away from the reality of being surrounded by these 4 freaking walls. There's so much that could be done with it. And I'm so happy to see that there are so many people that are trying to bring that forward, and I had to say something about it. You touched my heart with that one, and I thank you for bringing that up to us. So,
yeah, I mean, everybody at Debug is like huge on mental health. I mean, everybody has their struggles. It's like it's a human thing. It's a universal thing. Everybody struggles with mental health, even if people on the outside look like they're not. They are. So we all have something. And like you say, we put really well. Like, games are just a really great way to help get through that. I mean, you talk about like the pandemic and stuff. Everybody kind of, it's not an indie game, but everybody kind of caught on to Animal Crossing. Like, totally, like it was the game of the moment.
Yeah.
And it was so cute, and you could go meet your friends and you could do stuff, and it just took your mind away from all of that. And that's just one example of how a game can be helpful in a particular moment, for you mentally. So yeah, it's really good to be able to kind of highlight that, and we really wanted to do that. We all of us at Debug have our own things going on. I suffer and take medication for anxiety. I've had depression in the past. We've all had our own stuff, and Safe in Our World is a great charity who really like emphasizes all of that stuff and highlights it. So we wanted to make sure that we included that for sure.
I also will piggyback to say I appreciate the overall notion to all of this, especially because I think one of the biggest struggles that the gaming industry / market / mindset when it comes to the consumer is that people seem to fail to realize that video games are made by people. There are people behind those video games. There are passionate people, artists, creators, writers designers, there are people who spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours of blood, sweat, and tears to create this thing that you're experiencing and playing. And people are just so quick to just, and not realize, that there are human beings behind these creations. They don't make themselves. Video games don't make themselves. They are made by people. And to acknowledge that, as well as the mental health struggles that everyone goes through, and then games that help with that too. And every game can help with that in some form or fashion. You might not think about it, but I mean, what's your go-to relax game when you've had a hard day? What's your go-to game when you're angry and you want to tear some stuff apart, when you want to rip and tear? There's always something. There's always that. Video games allow people to disconnect or unplug in ways that human beings couldn't 30, 40 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also bringing accessibility, that's another, you really don't think about that. You forget because, you have two opposable thumbs and everything works for you. We have friends in our community with certain forms of accessibility, and it's always wonderful to hear their side of the equation, because sometimes it's simpler and sometimes it's harder. Sometimes there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than anybody can give it credit for. For us, it's as simple as plugging your thing into the wall. For them, that takes hours sometimes. There's so much to all of this, and so bringing such a universally well-known form of entertainment, because the only other thing is movies. But if you can play the movie, which is the whole point of a video game, that just adds one more level. Whether you become immersed or not, that's relevant. It's an experience that we all want to share. And so, I love seeing. That's why it warms my heart. That's why I get emotional thinking about it even right now. Because I work with these people. I've seen this for my entire life. They need a lot more, not even like recognition so much as just the representation. They need they need everybody to remember that they are part of this world too, and that they're just as welcome to all of this entertainment. They're just as welcome to these communities. They're just as absolutely 100% involved with all of it too. So, if you're there, we hear you, we love you very much, and come and talk to us, because I can talk forever. And this is where I start playing the music to play me off.
Bring our the wrap it up sign.
Yeah. You see, this is why you need a band. You didn't think about that, did you?
Forgot our house.
You're gonna get a guy like me.
I need a virtual cane that comes out and grabs you by the neck. And
we thought we'd be okay because we don't have Christopher Judge. We don't have Christopher Judge coming, so we thought we'd be fine.
Louis is our Christopher Judge, so
I can pontificate.
Yeah. So I want to kind of bring us back around to the awards show itself. So it is a live event that you guys are going to be producing live at the time, and you're actually having the developers there to accept the awards, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And all the developers who can get there. It's a global award, so anybody from around the world could kind of submit their games for the awards, which means that we have people from Japan, from Australia, from the US, from all over the world. So some people are flying out, which is great. So we've got a bunch of people from Europe. I think somebody is coming from Japan. I think a few people are coming from America. But not everybody can make it. Of course, it's not it's not something everybody can get to. So those that can't make it, if they do, and we'll kind of at least play a little video of them accepting it. But yeah, as many people as possible. We've got a lot of the devs who are kind of nominated, who are coming to be with us, which is really exciting. And I think that kind of, it's great that we have this Debug U event at the same time, because I guess for a lot of people, you'd just be coming to the awards for 2 hours and then that would be it. And the fact that so many people are coming from so far away, the fact that they're actually able to spend time, a few hours beforehand, network, play other games, do all this other stuff, I think it's kind of cool. That's there for them too. Gives them another incentive to come.
Makes
But
it worth the trip.
they're all going to be there. It's going to be live streamed. So wherever you are in the world, 9 p.m. GMT. I think we've tried to make it so that's an okay time for most places in the world. So I think that's that'll be something like 4 p.m. Eastern time.
I think that sounds
and then stuff like that. So I think 5 hours behind in New York, I think, and then it's like 8 hours in Los Angeles. So that'd be like 1 p.m. for Western.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So
I am not good with that. Dan always has to be like, all right, 20 minutes, Louis. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
Time zones.
That was in an hour. My bad.
But I'm happy to see just anything that's going to highlight a lot of indie games, especially like this is a personal problem of being like what I've been called a gaming omnivore. Like I try to play everything. I try to try everything. I try to play as many different genres from across every different platform that I can. And it's like when you try to play everything, it's impossible for one, but also a lot of things slip through the cracks. And like even at the Game Awards, they were talking about indie games that I've never heard of before. And I'm like, man, how did I not see that? But then again, I'm also like, where's this? Where's the games that I personally played and appreciated for the year? And it makes me personally really happy to see a dedicated event that hopefully isn't just like steamrolled by one game. Like this game just takes everything because that's the game apparently that anyone cares about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another reason why we had multiple categories, just to make sure that didn't happen. I mean, most awards you'll probably find that one game will take at least a few of the awards, just because people do really like it. I know all the winners already. Not that I can say anything, but I already know all the winners, and I can safely say it's quite diverse, at least. So there's that, which is nice. But yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I'm very excited. I'm very nervous for it now, but I'm very excited as well. So yeah.
So who won Game of the Year? I thought I got you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some of the standouts there. I'm sure there's going to be some of the bigger titles that are a little bit more well known right now, kind of sweeping things a little bit. But hopefully it's not too bad.
No, lots of other. I mean, even in the nominations, you can kind of see how many of probably lots of titles you'd never heard of before. And hopefully that's even just looking at the nominations for people. Hopefully that will just kind of get them to go and kind of be interested in those games. It's exactly why we do the magazine. You kind of flick through the magazine and go, oh, I've not heard of this before. And you'll kind of read about it. And we've got QR codes in the magazine as well. So you can scan it and go to the Steam page or the YouTube trailer and find out more. So that's, we're trying to bring the ethos of the magazine to the awards pretty much. And that's why we have we've got categories like In Case You Missed It, which we have in the magazine. So it's kind of highlighting games that came prior to 2023 that people maybe think that other people have missed or deserve more praise. We've got the Free Play Award. So games that are 100% free, you don't have to pay to play at all. And those don't get highlighted anywhere near as much as they should do. Not the stuff that you have to kind of get loot boxes and pay a subscription or buy cosmetics in, games that have been made by people and they're just charging no money for them. And there's a ton of those and they just don't get highlighted anywhere near as much as they should do because somebody still put a ton of time into that, but they're just not asking you to pay for it, as most people would. So it's nice to highlight those kind of games too. Also because not everybody has a lot of money these days, especially now, cost of living and stuff. People it's nice to have free options for people, something that you could play on your desktop, on your computer, or just something that's cool and free and will fill some time for you, and maybe you'll discover something that's really awesome that you've not even thought about trying because it was free. Because that can be a bit of a it can be a stigma sometimes, right? You think of free and you think, Fortnite, they're going to charge me a bunch of money for skins, or they're going to you have to pay to win kind of thing.
Yeah,
but that's not always the case.
How long is it free for?
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's the stigma too that if it's free, it must be bad kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is not the case all of the time. I'm not saying it's not always the case because sometimes free games can be bad, but that's the same with paid games. There are a lot of paid games that are pretty terrible sometimes. Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, that hits such a mark where I'm kind of the only reason why I got into certain games is because they were free, but yeah, it opens your eyes up a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And this Unsung Hero Award. What is that one? That one kind of caught my eye.
Yeah. So that is so basically we ask people to basically send in names of people who they think have done incredible things for the indie community, but just don't really get much in the way of praise. So that could be a developer, that could be somebody who helps in like with PR, or has helped like indie devs kind of grow their business, or even just people who like champion indie games. So we had tons of people like send in, and they had to justify why they thought this person should get the award. And we had all these lovely stories from people about how this person had helped them, get funding for a game, and they were being overlooked by all these other people, and they really helped them, or how this person kind of championed all these indie games, and they love reading their tweets because they find all these new and amazing games all the time. So it's just loads of different people from all sorts of different backgrounds doing different things, but all in the name of kind of helping the indie games community in some way. So yeah, we wanted to shine the light on that, because we always hear about the people whose praises have been sung are just always around. So we want to like shine a light on people who maybe you wouldn't think about, and show that side of things, really.
This is the most wholesome, the most positive. I'm like,
so good.
Can I watch this?
Wait, you're not
show?
going to just talk to Hideo Kojima for the umpteenth time for an hour instead of talking?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this sounds so cute. I'm not even going to say the word. This is Wholesome AF. All right, I don't want to curse in this anymore.
Not going to curse.
Not today. Not effing today. Oh man, my heart is full right now. I love this. This is great. The 2nd of February,
it's
right?
kind of what we like. Like we want to be positive. Like even in the magazine, we're positive. Even in the reviews, if we think a game is that bad that it deserves less than 2.5 stars, we just won't run the review. Or we'll just kind of highlight it in another section without giving it a score, because we know that people put time, effort, money into the endeavor. So even if it isn't the best game, we'd rather just not highlight that. So all the reviews you'll read will be that, there'll be games with issues and stuff, but they'll all be basically recommendations that we think would be great for you to play. All of the stuff that we don't think is very good, we'll still talk about. We just won't go into detail, and we won't give it a score. Because those, because even if we didn't like it, reviews are so subjective. Even if we didn't like it, somebody else might like it, and to give it a really terrible score and put people off playing it would just be unfair. So
that's something I was thinking about earlier too, with reviews in general, and like it's been a hot topic here on this show as well as in our internal teams about reviews and their validity. And like, I personally get so frustrated by the rhetoric of just people in the industry and in socials that reviews are pointless. And it's like, it's not true. You might think they're pointless because they don't align with your personal perspectives and points of view. But a review, whether it's a good review, positive, negative, it's information. It helps you make a decision. And I used to work at GameStop ages and ages ago, and people would ask me about what I thought of a game. And I'd say, oh, well, I didn't like it, but here's why I didn't like it. But that doesn't mean you won't like it if that's something you like. That's information that helps someone make a decision to purchase a game or not. Whether or not they agree with your opinion, it still informs your decision. So that's why a review, whether you're with it or against it, helps you as a consumer. Yeah. And it drives me nuts.
Yeah. And reviews help the devs as well. Like, it's again, because indie devs don't get as much coverage, they won't always get the reviews that kind of are helpful for them to have. Like, of course, they'll get tons of Steam reviews and stuff, but they don't get like proper critiqued reviews from game journalists. You'll get some, and some people will cover some, but there's so many indie games that there's just no way that everybody can cover everything. So it's just another outlet. Debug is another outlet for indie games to get those review scores, for people to cover those. And it's just helpful. Again, it's just all about visibility. And that even reviews are helpful to devs. Like I say, they're helpful for the buyers of games, and even if you don't agree with the review, at least it's kind of giving you information. And for devs too, they might not agree with a review either, but at least it's got visibility somewhere. And that's especially with the things like Metacritic and OpenCritic now, is the kind of thing that they require in order to get seen. So
if you want to check out the Indie Game Awards, you can go ahead and watch that. Again, if it's the same day as our premiere on YouTube, that should be happening, if not very soon. It might already be going on right now, and you can catch that, you said, on the YouTube channel, Andrew?
Yeah. I think all of our social stuff like Twitch and YouTube is debug.org. So it should be, if you search debug.org, O-R-G, on YouTube, you should find us there.
And I'll be sure to include a link in our show notes as well. So if you can't find it, it should be right there. You can scroll down and give it a click and go from there.
Yeah, I think in terms of the timing, it should be starting literally right now if
Like
you're watching
right
the
now.
live premiere on YouTube. So head over there. We'll meet you there. We'll be there as well.
And before we go, I just want to say I want to thank everybody for this wonderful opportunity and all of the things. Dan, screen. Okay, bye. Sorry, had to do a bit. All right. Close out.
Had to throw that bit in there. All right.
Had to.
Awesome.
It was
Very,
great.
very cool. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. Just to close this out with this episode of Screen Smash, just want to throw it out there for our listeners and audience members. We're working on some new ways to help build our show up, engage with our audience, and to make it more interesting for all of you. And with some of that, we have ideas for whether you guys could join us for a recording of the show, come hang out with us and join in on the conversations, even give us your ideas for topics for us to discuss on the show, or send in your gaming memories that you'd like for us to share on the show, most of which we will do through the CouchSoup Circle Space. So be sure to go over to CouchSoup, sign up for a free membership, join us in the Screen Smash Circle Space, and say hi, engage with us and let us know how you feel about some of that stuff, and we'll give you more information as we work out those details. All right. So,
Engagement,
yes.
Engage.
All the engagement, because feedback is good. We all like feedback. We all like to know what works, what doesn't, and how we can do better, just like indie game developers. So with that, thank you, Andrew, so much for joining us. Thank you for telling us all about the Indie Game Awards, Debug Magazine, Debug U. Appreciate you, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you,
thank you.
Nick and Louie. That'll do it for us. Thank you for playing. We'll see you all next week here on Screen Smash. Just, yeah.
I am this guy now.
That guy. You are
Hey.
Christopher Judge.
Buddy Chris.
Buddy Chris. Awesome. Wholesome AF.
AM.